Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, Type 1 Outdoors exists to educate and inspire Type 1 diabetics to merge their passions for the outdoors with this disease in a safe and responsible way. This video is the first video in a new series called Backpacking with Diabetes. The reason I chose backpacking as the first topic to cover on this channel is because I believe that as an outdoor activity, backpacking is one of the most complex and challenging activities that a Type 1 diabetic can venture into. There are a number of crucial questions that need to be answered before you consider going on a multi-day backcountry adventure. Questions like, how do I keep my insulin cool? Or how do I protect my feet? How do I pack my supplies so they're safe from the environment? Those are the questions and many more that we're going to be focusing on in this series. But today we're asking just one question: can you do it? Can you, as a Type 1 diabetic, put everything you need on your back and go out into the middle of nowhere for multiple days and still manage your diabetes in a safe and responsible way? And to answer that question, we have to look at ourselves. We have to assess our mindset towards having Type 1 diabetes. I've got a great example from my own experience just a few years ago of how powerfully your mindset towards Type 1 diabetes affects your ability to go on adventures. In 2017, me, my brothers, and our best friends set out on an ambitious 4-day, 27-mile backpacking trip in the San Juan Mountains right outside of Pagosa Springs, Colorado. The plan was to camp each night at beautiful mountainous lakes and enjoy a slower-paced time on the trail. That is not what happened. On day one, we made our way onto the main loop trail, only to find out from some locals that the trail hadn't been maintained in years. This meant climbing under and over countless fallen trees and scrambling up loose, unkept trails that would make that day the hardest day of hiking I had ever experienced. Not only had I trained too little to prepare for such a trip, but to make matters much worse, I was living my life at the time with a mindset of neglect towards my diabetes. See, there are two ways to experience freedom with this disease. Freedom by ignoring and neglecting your health, which is more enslaving than it is freeing, or freedom by taking control and responsibility over your health. Where was my mindset at the time? It was to ignore and neglect my Type 1 diabetes. I was checking my blood sugar maybe once a day. I was skipping my nightly Lantus injections, and I refused to consider getting a pump because I thought it would be too intrusive. I carried that mindset into the trip, and that morning as we left for the trail, I made the worst diabetic decision that I have ever made. I didn't bring my meter. Yeah, that means that for multiple days, I never once knew what my blood sugar levels were. Every insulin injection was a guess. Every correction was solely based on how my body felt. But when you're hiking all day, every day, eating food you're not used to, and experiencing exhaustion like you've never experienced, trying to guess where your blood sugar levels are becomes nearly impossible. And while these pictures look like we breezed through the trip with smiles on our faces, the effects of my decision and my mindset took their toll, and I began to realize that completing the entire journey could potentially be a life-threatening challenge for me. After a sleepless first night of freezing in our hammocks, we climbed to Hossack Lake, up the ridge of Cimarrona Peak to a fork in the road. We could either make our way over the north side of the ridge and commit to finishing the loop within the time frame we had planned for, or we could make the disappointing decision to head southward down the mountain, ending the trip early. With concerns about time, supplies, and my health, we made the decision to change the route and get down the mountain. I'll never know what would have happened with my diabetes if we had decided to attempt completing our original route, but I know now, looking back, that it would not have been good. I'm so thankful for a group of guys that had the wisdom and humility to read the situation, accept an alternative outcome, and still be able to make memories along the way. My trip in Colorado is a great example of having a lack of knowledge, lack of preparation, but more importantly, a mindset that was unwilling to take control of my Type 1 diabetes. Now fast forward just a little over a year. In 2019, we arrived in Yosemite National Park. We learned from our mistakes. We trained, we researched, we kept each other accountable, and now we were nervously excited for an epic and challenging 5-day, 35-mile trek. However, there was nothing that could have prepared us for the mosquitoes, but that's another story. As for my health, I was a new person. What I had experienced in Colorado woke me up to the severity of my mindset towards my diabetes and the inevitable consequences that would occur if I continued living that way. I would only be sharing half the truth if I didn't tell you that I was also going through a kind of spiritual awakening that changed my entire perception of being given type 1 diabetes, and I credit that as the primary force that helped me change my mindset. More on that another time. I had taken responsibility and control. With the help of my family, I changed over from insulin pens to an insulin pump with a continuous glucose monitoring system. I cut out certain foods and was training physically months before our expedition. I was experiencing the real freedom that comes when you own this disease rather than letting it own you. Did it make any difference on this trip? It made a world of difference. And there are things that I learned about managing my diabetes that I now put to practice on every adventure I go on. With my new pump and the convenience of having my blood sugar read every 5 minutes, I was able to keep my average blood sugar below 140 for the entire trip. It was like clockwork, and by the second day, I was feeling more in tune with the patterns of my diabetes on the trail than I ever had. No more guessing games, no more anxious doubting, or wondering if I'm having a low or if it's just my sore muscles. I had learned my lessons, and I'm hoping you can learn from them too. The trail involved almost 12,000 feet of elevation gain, and took us to destinations like Tenaya Lake, Clouds Rest, Half Dome, Little Yosemite Valley, and Mist Trail. I can honestly say that it was one of the most, if not the most, incredible and beautiful outdoor adventures of my life. Yes, I was at one point running from hordes of mosquitoes, and yeah, my feet got hot spots in the beginnings of blisters. There were even times when I wanted with everything in me to see our campsite in the distance so I could rest. But that is nothing in comparison to the anxious worry and dread that I had felt in 2017 when I had no control over my health. I was free from that mindset, and I was experiencing all the things that make a great adventure. So now you have seen one of the worst failures in my adventure career and one of the greatest successes. And the deciding factor was my mindset towards having type 1 diabetes. So to answer the question, can you do it? Can you backpack with type 1 diabetes? The answer is, it depends. Anyone can do it, but you have to choose to have the mindset to take control of your diabetes before you go out there. Skip learning from your failures like I did, and take the time now to assess yourself, assess your mindset. How do you feel towards having your diabetes? Are you in control of your blood sugars right now in normal life? Because if you're not and you get out there, it will be disastrous. But to finish this video, I just want to encourage you, you can backpack with diabetes. You can change your mindset towards your diabetes. It's going to take work, it's going to take preparation and research, but you can do it. I wouldn't be here if you couldn't do it, because the purpose of me being here is to help you get out there. I hope this was helpful for you. If you know someone who could benefit from a series like Backpacking with Diabetes, please share this with them. If that's you, please stick around, continue through the series, because we're going to be talking about some really awesome things. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.